Henry Hutchinson is the founder and president of Family Business USA. He grew up working for his family's business, Olin Mills Portrait Studios. Oh boy, do I remember those, Henry. And had an international management career with UPS, Sunshine Electric, IBM, and he studied psychology at the American College of Switzerland. Has a BA from the University of Texas at Austin and an MBA in management from Columbia Business School. He serves on the board of directors of the Institute of Management Consultants, is a certified management consultant, and a certified family business advisor. He's written for many business and industry newspapers and magazines, lectures to audiences across the country on family business topics, has been interviewed by numerous television networks, and is the author of the best-selling family business book, Dirty Little Secrets of Family Business. Welcome, Henry.
Thanks, Gail. A pleasure to be here.
Well, you know, it's interesting. Of course, you're an IMC member, as am I, and a CMC, as am I, and I was just fortunate enough to be elected as a FIMC, so I'm very proud of that.
Congratulations,
Thank you. But, you know, I did I only can say one program for the Institute of Family Business up in the University of Illinois, Champaign. And it was really interesting to me to hear the issues with many family businesses. I'm sure you're going to tell us a lot about this, but interesting because there were such family dynamics of A, either the kids didn't want to go into the business, or B, if there was more than one child, who was the one that was a designated, let's say, successor.
Right.
And especially, I mean, if it was a sister and a brother, very often the brother, of course, won. But if there were two sons, the dynamics there. So I'm going to start off by asking you, because I know it's got to be very hairy sometimes, why do you work with family businesses?
Well, you know, the short answer is it's a passion of mine. You know, we've always heard as we go through life, you know, you got to make a living and you have to have enough money to put food on the table and have a roof over your head and so on and so forth. But, you know, some of us are lucky enough to pursue our passion. And this has been a passion of mine, you know, ever since I was a child. I went on a different career path. But let me get down to specifics. Something like over 75% of all businesses in the United States are family-owned, run, or managed. They represent a huge proportion of our GDP, something like 65%. And I think it's something like 75% of all new jobs come from family businesses. But most of them fail. 2/3, they've been recording this through FFI, an organization that tracks some of this stuff, since probably the late 60s, early 70s. They'll take 100 family businesses and then they'll come back after they have transitioned, and there's only 33% remaining. So regardless of the generation, you lose 2/3. And so the reason I'm involved in this is that I have seen this and I understand this, and by getting involved, you can help these family businesses make these transitions. It's being able to provide that help, you know, and it's not just the business, it's the family too. I mean, these are people that you love and are part of your family. And so when they fall apart, it's not just the money part, it's the relationship part as well. And so it's great to be able to be able to help.
Did you experience any of that when you were working with your family business, with your parents?
Well, you know, it's funny you say that. That's kind of probably the root of why I do this. My grandfather founded Olin Mills. He and my grandmother, Mary, they had 3 children. They had 4 children: my mother, my aunt, my uncle, and my uncle. And then my aunt didn't have kids, but everybody else had kids. We went through every family business issue you could possibly go through, but we got through them all. We got through all of them. There was the struggle between my grandfather and my uncles. There was the struggle between my uncles. There was the struggle between my uncles and my mother and my aunt. There was the struggle between my uncles and the next generation. We had it all. We went through all of it, and in the end, we had made it through all of this. unfortunately, um, the industry of taking pictures of people dissolved with cameras going onto cell phones and the end of being able to do telemarketing, which was their primary route to market, was calling people up and saying, hey, do you want to have your picture taken? So the industry fell apart, but it wasn't because of us. I mean, it wasn't because we couldn't run a family business and get through the issues. So we have family reunions, and we've got a great family. And so I think I can take some of this. I can relate to people that are in these situations, and I mean, it's not the answer, but I can say, hey, I've been there. I know what you mean. Let me tell you what happened to us. And I think we can get through this. So I think I can help.
That brings up something else too, Henry, that you mentioned, though. I'm a big, huge believer in marketing, and I try all different kinds of marketing. But going back to two of the issues that you talked about, and this is what people, I know this is a show on how to live, with regret-free, but you brought up business. So I want to talk about these two things. And that is, telemarketing went away, which no one would believe if you still get all the telemarketing calls you get today.
Yes.
However, I was a great telemarketer. They called me the queen of telemarketing because all of my businesses I telemarketed. But to me, they were all warm calls, not cold calls. And the interesting thing is that you have to have 3, 4, 5 different ways of marketing, because if the whole idea in marketing is if you're depending on one line of revenue or one methodology and that goes away, you're in deep trouble. And that's exactly evidently what happened. And the other thing is there are still, though, photography studios around because, and it just becomes, I think you have to have a different appeal to why people would want a portrait or a picture, because everybody's got all these digital things on their phones and so forth, but very few people print anything out anymore. And so you ask somebody, oh, let me see a picture of your kid, they reach for their phone. They
exactly.
really don't have
right
walls anymore. So
it's interesting that you bring that up because, at the origin of Olin Mills, it was this is, back in Depression days. My mother tells the stories of the salesmen coming to the house to have dinner. They'd talk about their day. They'd all find a corner to sleep in. They'd groom themselves in the morning and hit the road and go door to door. But once it's an unknown secret that Olin Mills basically invented telemarketing, but it was a different thing. They would put a studio in a town next to a development area, and they would hire local people from the church, from the school, from the neighborhood, from the community, and they would call people up at appropriate times and say, hey, this is so-and-so, and I'm with Olin Mills, and we've got this special, and we're in the studio right around the corner from your house, and would you like to come in and take pictures? And there was a 95% acceptance rate. Everybody wanted to get their picture taken. So it was a novelty kind of back then. But once that, it evolved, then it turned into something where people are getting phone calls from foreign countries during dinner selling you things that you don't want. And
right.
In the end, we my uncles went to Washington and, said their piece and said, look, we're not doing that. We know who we're calling. We know when we're calling, but there were too many bad characters in the field, and it went away. And so that's when we started being more of a retail presence. But it's really the digital photography. It can't replace the portrait over the fireplace. So now the pictures that get taken are from the local, well-known, expert, polished photographer that's in your neighborhood. It's just it's not a national art anymore. It's individual photographers, and that business has grown greatly for all of those individuals around the country.
That's true. So where, in your opinion, then, do family businesses go wrong?
There are lots of landmines, but the number one thing the number one thing that causes the problems, and it's going to sound trite, is communication, or rather the lack of it. You've got dads, you've got kids, maybe mom's working there or not, but she's a part of this whole thing. and the questions are out there. When is dad going to leave? Is dad going to pass this on to us? How much ownership are we going to get? Who's going to be in charge of this business? Are my kids capable of doing this? What if one kid is more capable than another? How do we determine, all of this stuff? And no conversations are taking place with regards to this because people are afraid that they're going to hurt people's feelings. And so they're afraid to talk about it.
Henry, you have just brought up marvelous points. And I was thinking as you were making them, well, why don't they get this all straightened out ahead of time? I mean, you can certainly give kids assignments and responsibilities to see who can handle what.
Right.
You can certainly have a frank conversation with who's going to get what. You can certainly say, these are my plans. When I hit 65 or 75, I'm going to retire. Or you can say, I'm never going to retire, and however, I will remain as CEO and I will make you president and you can run the company, but I will still have, the final say or whatever format it takes. But
right.
I think you're saying is families are afraid to have these conversations.
And the ones that do, we don't know what the answer is. And when I get engaged with a client, they say, hey, what's the answer? I said, I don't know the answer. We are going to figure out what is the best answer here together. And I'm going to help you with my knowledge and my, I'm not invested in it, I'm a bright guy, et cetera. But we need to establish a forum of, we are a business with family members, and that makes it tricky. So the only thing I'm saying is let's agree that we need to get together periodically, or we need to open up communications altogether appropriately to say, we need to talk about these things. We need to make sure we're talking about these things. I don't have the answers, but let's put the questions on the table and let's talk about it. And as we go through, the hope is that the business will continue. Mom, dad, you'll get your retirement. Somebody appropriate will step up. We don't know what the answers are, but let's agree that we need to be talking about this stuff, and so that we can come to an answer, and we can all agree that we don't want to hurt each other's feelings. We do all love each other, but we want the business to continue. And the most important thing is to make sure we've got an open communication channel and a communication system. And the best thing is having regular family meetings. And these are not about business. This isn't about what are our sales. This is about, okay, so where are we in the progression of the transition of the business, and what do we need to talk about? Let's talk about the things that we need to talk about.
Yeah, that's great. So what do you think then are some of the success stories that you have from family businesses?
Oh, man. It's a spectrum. The one I use as my quote unquote greatest success story was a family business with a man that was running a business. He had 3 kids, 2 boys in, and one, the daughter was out. And it's a long story, but essentially the one son who was extremely bright, top scores, top grades, top everything, went to the top school, but he was the kind of guy that had great ideas, but couldn't show up to work on time, couldn't finish a project, didn't want to take orders from anybody, so on and so forth. We ended up going through a process of helping him come to the realization that he really didn't want to be doing this. So we got him out of the business, met with the owner and got one of the employees to say, look, he works for me. The only reason that I haven't fired him is because he's your kid. And, I can't fire your kid. But if it were up to me, I would have fired him a long time ago. So he kind of emotionally went through that. We dismissed his child. He's now doing a career that he's very happy with, making more money, so on and so forth. And then the other son's here, very diligent, very bright also, but he was not sure that he really wanted to take this thing on because of the hours involved and the amount of work that was involved to do this business. And so we took him through a process of adding on a whole new division to this company that is much more profitable. And he ran this whole thing. He started this whole thing. Now he's become super qualified to run the business. to such point that at the end of the year we were making some plans and reorganizing some things,